Hello everyone, welcome to today's class. Today we are going to read a beautiful story titled The Best Christmas Present in the World, written by Michael Morpurgo. Michael Morpurgo is a British writer, better known as the writer for the children. He was born on 5th October 1943. He has written numerous number of short stories for children, and this is one of the best too. Let's try to know the background of the story. The story has been set in the background of the First World War, 1914. When the story unravels, we find that the British and the German soldiers are war against each other. Let us see the characters here. We have a British army officer named Jim McPherson, his wife Connie. Jim left her when he went for war, promising her that he would be reaching and meeting her or joining her in the next Christmas time. She has been waiting for him so long. Then we have another army officer from the German side. His name is Hans Wolf. So these are the main characters in the story. When the story opens, we see the narrator of the story, better identified as a writer, has been to a junk shop at Bridport. He is going to buy a roll-top desk. You may wonder what a roll-top desk is. It is nothing but a type of writing table with a cover that he can push back or pull down. So our story begins. Listen to it carefully. I spotted it in a junk shop in Bridport, a roll-top desk. The man said it was early 19th century and oak. I'd always wanted one, but they were always far too expensive. This one was in a bad condition. The roll-top in several pieces, one leg clumsily mended, scotch marks all down one side. It was going for a very little money, and I reckoned I was just about capable enough to have a go at restoring it. It would be a risk, a challenge, but I had to have it. I paid the man and brought it back to my workroom at the back of the garage. I began work on it on Christmas Eve, mostly because the house was resonating with overexcited relatives and I wanted some peace and quiet. I removed the roll top completely and pulled out the drawers. Each one confirmed that this would be a bigger job than I had first thought. The veneer, the outer cover, had lifted almost everywhere. It looked like water damage to me. Both the fire and water had clearly taken their toll on this desk. The last drawer was stuck fast. I tried all I could to ease it out gently. In the end, I used brute force. I struck it sharply with my side of my fist, and the drawer flew open to reveal a shallow space underneath, a secret drawer. There was something in there. I reached in and took out a small tin box. Sellotaped to the top of it was a piece of lined notepaper, and written on it in shaky handwriting, Jim's last letter, received January 25th, 1915. To be buried with me when time comes. I knew, as I did, that it was wrong of me to open the box, but curiosity got the better of my scruples. It usually does. Inside the box, there was an envelope. The address read, Mrs. Jim McPherson, 12 Copper Beaches, Bridport, Dorset. I took out the letter and unfolded it. It was written in pencil and dated at the top, December 26, 1914. The letter reads, Connie, dearest Connie, I write to you in a much happier frame of mind because something wonderful has just happened that I must tell you about at once. We were all standing in our trenches yesterday morning, Christmas morning. It was crisp and quiet all about, as beautiful a morning as I have ever seen, as cold and frosty as Christmas morning should be. I should like to be able to tell you that we began it, but the truth, I'm ashamed to say, is that Fritz began it. First, someone saw a white flag waving from the trenches opposite. Then they were calling out to us from across no man's land, "Happy Christmas, Tommy! Happy Christmas!" When we had got over the surprise, some of us shouted back, "Same to you, Fritz! Same to you!" I thought that would be that. We all did. But then suddenly, one of them was up there in his grey greatcoat and waving a white flag. "Don't shoot, lads!" someone shouted, and no one did. Then there was another Fritz up on the parapet, and another. "Keep your heads down," I told the man. "It's a trick." But it wasn't. One of the Germans was waving a bottle above his head. "It's Christmas Day, Tommy. We have schnapps. We have sausage. We meet you, yeah?" By this time, there were dozens of them walking towards us across no man's land, and not a trifle between them. Little Private Morris was the first up. "Come on, boys. What are we waiting for?" And then there was no stopping them. I was the officer. I would have stopped them there and then, I suppose, but the truth is that it never ever occurred to me I should. All along the line and ours, I could see men walking slowly towards one another, grey coats, khaki coats meeting in the middle. And I was one of them. I was part of this. In the middle of the war, we were making peace. You cannot imagine, dearest Connie, my feelings as I looked in the eyes of the Fritz officer who approached me, hands outstretched. "Hans Wolf," he said, gripping my hand warmly and holding it. "I'm from Dusseldorf. I play cello in the orchestra. Happy Christmas," I replied. "Captain Jim McPherson. And a happy Christmas to you too. I'm a school teacher from Dorset, in the west of England." "Ah, Dorset," he smiled. "I know this place. I know it very well." We shared my rum ration and his excellent sausage. And we talked, Connie. How we talked. He spoke almost perfect English. But it turned out that he had never set foot in Dorset, never even been in England. He had learned all he knew of England from school and from reading books in English. His favorite writer was Thomas Hardy, his favorite book Far from Madding Crowd. So out there in no man's land, we talked of Bathsheba and Gabriel, or the characters, the Sergeant Troy, and Dorset as well. He had a wife and one son, born just 6 months ago. As I looked about me, there were huddles of khaki and grey everywhere, all over no man's land, smoking, laughing, talking, drinking, eating. Henceforth, when I shared that was left of your wonderful Christmas cake, Connie, he thought the marzipan was the best he had ever tasted. I agreed. We agreed about everything, and he was my enemy. There never was Christmas party like it, Connie. Then someone, I don't know who, brought out a football. Greatcoats were dumped in piles to make goalposts, and next thing we knew, it was Tommy against Fritz. It was the British against the Germans, out in the middle of no man's land. Hans Wolf and I looked on and cheered, clapping our hands and stamping our feet to keep out the cold as much as anything. There was a moment when I noticed our breaths mingling in the air between us. He saw it too and smiled. "Jim Macpherson," he said after a while, "I think this is how we should resolve this war. A football match. No one dies in a football match. No children are orphaned. No wives become widows." "I would prefer cricket," I told him. "Then we Tommies could be sure of winning, probably." We laughed at that, and together we watched the game. Sad to say, Connie, Fritz won, 2 goals to 1. But as Hans Wolf generously said, our goal was wider than theirs, So it was not quite fair. The time came, and all too soon, when the game was finished, and the schnapps and rum and the sausages had long since run out, and we knew it was all over. I wished Hans well and told him I hoped he would see his family again soon, that the fighting would end and we could all go home. I think that is what every soldier wants on both sides, Hanwald said. Take care, Jim McPherson. I shall never forget this moment, nor you. He saluted and walked away from me slowly, unwillingly, I felt. He turned to wave just once and then became one of the hundreds of grey coat men drifting back towards their trenches. That night, back in our dugouts, we heard them singing carol and singing it quite beautifully. It was a silent night. Our boys gave them a rousing chorus of Wild Shepherds Watch song. We exchanged carols for a while, and then we all fell silent. We had had our time of peace and goodwill, a time I'll treasure as long as I live. Dearest Connie, by Christmas time next year, this war will be nothing but a distant and terrible memory. I know from all that happened today how much both armies long for peace. We shall be together again soon, I'm sure of it. Your loving Jim. I folded this letter again and slipped it carefully back into its envelope. I told no one about my find, but kept my shameful intrusion to myself. It was this guilt, I think, that kept me awake all night. By morning, I knew what I had to do. I made an excuse and didn't go to church with the others. Instead, I drove into Bridport, just a few miles away. And I asked a boy walking his dog where Copper Beaches was. Number 12 turned out to be nothing but a burned out shell, the roof gaping, the windows boarded up. I knocked at the house next door and asked if anyone knew the whereabouts of Mrs. Macpherson. Oh, yes, said the old man in the slippers. He knew her well. A lovely old lady, he told me, a bit muddle-headed, but at least at her age she was entitled to be, wasn't she? 101 years old. She had been in this house when it caught fire. No one really knew how the fire had started, but it could be well have been the candles. She used candles rather than electricity, because she always thought electricity was too expensive. The fireman had got her out just in time. She was in the nursing home right now, he told me. Burlington House, on Dorchester Road on the other side of the town. I found Burlington House nursing home easily enough. There were paper chains up in the hallway, and a lighted Christmas tree stood in the corner with a lopsided angel on top. I said I was a friend come to visit Macpherson and to bring her a Christmas present. I could see through into the dining room where everyone was wearing a paper hat and singing along to Good King Wenceslas. The matron had a hat on too and seemed happy enough to see me. She even offered me mince pie. She walked me along the corridor. Mrs. Macpherson is not in with the others, she told me. She's rather confused today, so we thought it best if she had a good rest. She's no family, no one visits, so I'm sure she'll be only too pleased to see you. She took me into the conservatory with the wicker chairs and potted plants all around and left me. The old lady was sitting in a wheelchair, her hands folded in her lap. She had silver white hair pinned into a wispy bun. She was gazing out at the garden. Hello, I said. She turned and looked up at me vacantly. Happy Christmas, Connie, I went on. I found this. I think it's yours. As I was speaking, her eyes never left my face. I opened the tin box and gave it to her. That was the moment her eyes lit up with recognition and her face became suffused with a sudden glow of happiness. I explained about the desk, about how I had found it, but I don't think she was listening. For a while she said nothing, but she stroked the letter tenderly with her fingertips. Suddenly she reached out and took my hand. Her eyes were filled with tears. You told me you would come home by Christmas, dearest, she said. And here you are, the Christmas present in the world, the best Christmas present in the world. Come closer, Jim dear. Sit down. I sat down beside her, and she kissed my cheek. I read your letters so often, Jim, every day. I wanted to hear your voice in my head. It always made me feel you were with me. And now you are. Now you're back, you can read it to me yourself. Would you do that for me, dear Jim? I just want to hear your voice again. I would love that so much. And then perhaps we will have some tea. I've made you the nice Christmas cake. Marzipan all around. I know how much you love marzipan.